Israeli forces have injured at least 70 Palestinians in a clampdown on an anti-settlement protest in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian media said the troops opened live and rubber bullets, stun grenades and tear gas at the protesters in the Beita village. Palestinians have been holding daily protests against the construction of an illegal settlement outpost on Mount Sabih for nearly 4 months. In Kufur Qaddoum as well, Palestinians were assaulted by the occupation forces during the weekly anti-settlement procession. Palestinian media said a young man was shot with a rubber-coated steel bullet in the head, while several others were injured. Protesters say they will not be intimidated by the Israeli violence and will continue to resist against the occupation. Now we have with us Akram Nache, a social activist from the occupied West Bank. Nache, thank you for joining us. My first question to you is, Israeli forces have again injured at least 70 Palestinians in a clampdown on an anti-settlement protest in the occupied West Bank, while it continues to attack Gaza Strip, violating May's ceasefire. But the international community is silent on this and Israeli aggression. What is your take?
Okay, when we're talking about the clashes and the Israeli violation against the peaceful protesters, Palestinian non-violent protesters every day in West Bank, they are aiming to make them silence. They don't want any kind of a protest, even in West Bank, in Gaza, in any part of Palestine, to appear on TVs, on in media and international media, because this kind of a protest says there's a continuous occupation, there's a continuous human rights violation, there is a continuous demolishing house. So Israeli occupation don't want any kind of a protest against the occupation, and they don't want. They just only want the story and the image of that Israeli open the checkpoints. They are give the permission for Palestinian to work, and they just want these kind of images and stories to be appear on international media, not the real story, not the real what happened in the ground. So every day there's a non-violent protest, even in Gaza, in West Bank, and Israeli occupation, Israeli forces storming in them and violating them.
All right, Mr. Akram, the next question that I want to ask is that forced convictions of Palestinians home and demolitions are being carried out by the Israeli authorities. What strategy does the Palestinian authorities could adopt to avoid these evictions and demolitions?
Okay, Israeli demolition houses in West Bank and Jerusalem and Palestine, occupied Palestine 48 is continuous also process. So Israel want to evacuate these places from Palestinians. They demolish this house. They justify usually demolishing houses by that it's unpermission house. Also, although it was built before the occupation, it was before it was built before declaring Israeli occupation, also our Israeli state. So Israel want to evacuate all Palestinians from Area C in West Bank, from inside occupied Jerusalem, from also the Palestinian cities and villages in occupied Palestine 1948. But usually Palestinians try to protest, try to say, no, we will stay in our houses, we will stay in our land, because if we leave our houses, where we can go? If we go from our houses and evacuated it for settlers, that means we are practicing a new Nakba, a new refugee story. So Palestinians try to stay and to start fitness in their houses, not to leave them, and uses all possible thing that they can use, that they can do in their state witness and their houses, and even it's legal, international, or local strategy to keep their houses against the occupation.
All right. Now, how do the Palestinians survive with this strict blockade of the Gaza Strip?
Okay, Palestinian try usually to use all of method, all of strategy against occupation, even it's local, international, or anything to keep they are living in their houses. By the way, there is many Palestinians, they can't live even a house. They live in the tents or live in caves in the Al-Masafir, let's say, or in the Jordan Valley, or in many places. They stay, although there is no possible for their life, but they think that if they leave their land, the settler will take it. So they try to stay anyway under all the pressure to keep the land, although all practices, all Palestinian, they don't leave their houses.
Right. So Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed has called upon the U.S. to reopen its Consulate General in occupied East Jerusalem, while Tel Aviv has said it would be a bad idea. Do you think Washington will stick to its decision of reopening the consulate?
Okay, about the consul in U.S. consul in occupied Jerusalem, there's rumors, or since Biden won the election, they are talking about to reopen the U.S. consulate in occupied Jerusalem, usually, and all for sure. Israel refused that. If Israel, they just want one embassy in Jerusalem, and that will mean that Trump's steps, which was taken during the Trump period, it was that U.S. step back for that. So Israeli pressure now to not reopen, to banning reopen the consulate in Jerusalem, and they just want the one embassy in Jerusalem for Israeli and Palestinian, which is mean there is no recognition for Palestinian states in West Bank and Jerusalem. So we think that if Palestinian give more pressure, if Palestinian practice more pressure, it will be U.S. will may reopen the consulate of although the Israeli rejection.
All right, Mr. Akram Natche, thank you for joining Indus News.